Step one is segmenting my travel windows because every single day has a different booking window. And you would want to segment your travel windows based off of seasonality, but also events and compression dates, because you might have those little micro booking windows within a larger, for instance, low season, but you have an event smack dab in the middle. So you're going to want to make sure that you segment that appropriately.
I think segmenting everything out is the key here. Segment out like your customers, they behave differently. Segment out your channels, like Verbo leads going to be like much longer than the Airbnb leads. And also like segmenting out your portfolio from different bedroom size, because each going to tell a different story.
Let's talk about the month of December in any market. Christmas is probably going to have like a 60 to 90 day lead time. The weekends in December may have a 25 to 30 day lead time. Monday and Tuesday during the slowest period, or like the first week in December, they may only have like a 7 day lead time where people are actually really, really looking at it and trying to get that booked up.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. Do appreciate you joining us today. Give us just a few minutes. We're going to let some of our folks trickle in here, but we're looking forward to this fun and exciting masterclass with you today. Appreciate you joining us. Already got a nice chunk of people coming in here, so I'll go through this real quick. Jeff Gibb, you are in here a couple of times. Nice to see you. I see my guy Henry. How's it going, Henry? Good to see you, buddy. Lots of familiar names in here. Great to see you all. My name's Kyle. I'm a senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. Kind of fumbled over that. Senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. And I'm your host today for this wonderful RevLabs. Real quick, a little bit of maintenance, so to speak. You're going to have a couple of polls that'll pop up periodically. If you don't mind, participate in those. It'll just kind of help us understand who we're working with and how we can tailor our messaging in the future. We're going to have two other options for you, or two places where you can chat with us if you want to. You have the chat area. In that chat area, if you will, let's try to make some friends, learn from other people that are in here, other attendees, maybe put where you're located, how many properties you have, but maybe you can find somebody that's in your market and meet a friend that way. If you have any questions for us, please put those in the Q&A. We're going to try to save some of those towards the end of the webinar. I do have my teammate Aditya here. He will be helping to answer those questions. So as a few extra people trickle in, let me get my screen share and we will get started up. Oh, started in the middle of my presentation. Let's get back there. All right, so as everybody's trickling in here, thank you all again. This is our masterclass by RevLabs, and today we're talking about mastering the booking window, how to adapt to changing lead times kind of across all these markets. Been doing a lot of research recently and really seeing that booking windows have changed pretty significantly. Some of them are getting shorter, some of them are getting tighter, but I think what we'll learn today is that it's really all about your strategy, your property, and things will be different for you. So real quick, again, I'm a senior solutions, I can't say this word anymore. Senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. My name's Kyle. I've been with PriceLabs for going on about 2.5 years now. Absolutely love it. And I love hosting these webinars. I'm joined by my awesome teammate, Aditya, who's one of the best product specialists on our team. He's one of those people, if you ever have a fire to put out and you reach out to support, he's right there to help you out. And he's going to be here to help with questions as well. So if you have a question that's very PriceLabs specific, Aditya is going to help with that. If it's a little bit more revenue strategy, or we think that our fellow co-host today will be able to help with it, we'll save that towards the end. So now I'm technically supposed to talk about PriceLabs right now, but really, if you're here, you know about PriceLabs. I'm not going to go into really, really big detail, but we are a dynamic pricing and revenue management system for pretty much anything across the board. Short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, service apartments, tents, campsites, boutique hotels, pretty much anything you want to do, you can do with PriceLabs. Getting into mid-term rental pricing, you can do long-term rental pricing as well. But the real stars of our show today are Miss Emily Pattillo, partner with RevZen, and also a co-founder of RevProf, which is helping to professionalize the revenue management space, really start to standardize things for us. I'm a proud member of RevProf as well, so really looking forward to this chat with you, Emily. And then we're also joined by Emre Ilgaz, the Director of Revenue Management for AvantStay. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you, if you don't mind, Emily, if you don't care, let's introduce yourself. Most of the audience, I'm sure, knows who you are, but we're so lucky to have you here. And just, yeah, give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah, Henry, I saw you pop up on the screen. Just want to say hi back. Anyway, Emily Pattillo. I have darker hair now than I do in this photo, so don't be confused because it probably will change in a month. But I've been in this industry for over a decade. I'm the former head of revenue for Cassiola Vacation Homes, former vice president of revenue for Highgate Hotels, and most recently, I transferred over to work with Sarah Branson at RevZen. So partners there, we help our clients understand more about their revenue. We do revenue as a service. And so I'm just happy to be here and lend any sort of expertise that I can. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Super excited to have you, Emily. And then Emery, if you give a little background about yourself, let the audience know some. And yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about AvantStay and even a little bit of the strategy if you want to.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, my name is Emre. I've been at AvantStay since last eight years and been doing the revenue management and leading the revenue management function at AvantStay. And we scaled the company from like 50 units, like 20 units to like right now over 2,600. So we are operating like across like, all country, like from coastal markets to mountain, urban locations, ski markets. Basically like most leisure and destination markets, but also like expanding our presence in the urban locations and both multifamily portfolio as well as like single family homes, mostly focused on the premium segments, but it's a like wide range of asset class from boutique hotels to like large estates. So yeah, a little bit have exposure like across different asset types in the industry.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And if you don't mind, before we really get into this booking window conversation, do y'all care to talk a little bit about some of the markets that you work in? And Emery, let's start with you.
Sure. So yeah, we're basically, as I mentioned, right, like we are mostly on the destination markets. There are the largest markets, like we have the presence like in Florida, we have coastal markets, obviously Destin, and on the Carolinas, like Destin 38, like Panama City in the Florida Panhandle, and like when we go to like Texas, like Port Aransas, and on the Carolinas, we have Charleston, Isle of Palms, like all those like major areas. And when it comes to California, from San Diego to wine markets, Temecula, Paso, Sonoma, and obviously ski markets, Tahoe, Park City, Telluride, Breckenridge, and Nashville is like another big market that we have presence like in the urban side, Austin as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of it, but basically most of those markets that we have presence in right now.
Awesome.
And yeah.
And how about for you, Emily?
So we also cover a wide range of portfolios, both here and internationally. Anywhere from, a big presence in Florida. I actually got my start in Orlando, so very, very familiar with that market. Big presence in California, but also some urban markets like Philly, Miami, and the sorts. So I've worked in, I don't want to say just about every market, but I think one time I counted like 19. So happy to be a little bit more condensed at this point, but we've worked all different kinds of products, multifamily to, the big 7-bedroom villas that you'll find. So lots of wide ranges there.
Absolutely. And I think that's great for our audience to know that we're getting ready to hear from two excellent speakers that are really, really involved in a bunch of different markets. So this whole booking window conversation, things are very different, going from Destin versus Philly, your booking window and your lead times are so incredibly different. So hopefully we can cover kind of a broad range of areas for us. If you have a particular spot you want us to chit chat about and we have a little bit of knowledge about it, throw that in the Q&A. And if we have time towards the end, we will cover that. Real quick, let's talk about our agenda and then we will move on and really get into the good stuff. So first things first, we're going to start off talking about how the booking landscape's changing a little bit. Here in a second, I'm going to pull up a slide and the numbers that you see won't be massive, but we're going to put a little bit of a little bit of flair behind it and talk about how we get to those different numbers. And talk about what this means to you. What does the booking change mean to you? We're also going to talk about how you can identify booking window patterns. I'll pull up some things in PriceLabs and show you where you can find that. And then we're also going to talk about what you might need to do to adapt. How would you change your pricing strategy? What might you need to do with your stay rules, the minimum stays, things like that. And then we'll close up just talking about some key takeaways and then just have a nice Q&A as well. So let's go ahead and bounce over. Now here, we've got a couple of interesting markets. Most of these are the bigger city type things. And we're going to talk a little bit about rural versus urban, a little bit about destination market versus these urban markets. But one of the things that we're pointing out right here is a lot of markets we do deem as last minute markets. So one of the ones that we've got here is Las Vegas. 14 days out is that average booking window. I guess I should say the median booking window, not necessarily the average. Orlando's a very short booking window for the median. Same with Nashville and Chicago. Now, Emily, Emre, you all both work in many of these markets. Are you all kind of seeing the same thing? And then we don't have Philly in here, but that was one of our talking points earlier this week, Emily, is that Philly's kind of seeing a similar thing. So if you don't mind, maybe just talk about what you're seeing inside of urban markets that you work with right now and how things might have been changing over the past year or two. And if you want,
Yeah,
let's start with you, Miss Emily.
So, sorry, I was already taking the liberty. I think that not necessarily all of our urban markets, but there's a general trend that if an urban market is highly affected by international travel, that booking window is decreasing a little bit, sometimes more. Nashville has a pretty stark decrease. So if it's being affected by international travelers right now, there's a higher chance that could be happening. Now, if you look at Orlando, for instance, you have that in there as an urban market. Orlando is actually kind of a blend. It's a very different kind of market. So we also have family travelers, we have business travelers. It's a whole giant mix. So that market in particular actually is not decreasing. It has not decreased its booking window. But we'll get into the nuances of what we consider booking window to be a little bit later, because I think that you have to segment it when we're talking about these things, because the way that you look at your data really matters.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. And how about you, Emery? How do you feel about what you're seeing in the more urbanish markets?
So Nashville is one of our big markets, and definitely like we're seeing that in the market. Like people are like traveling last minute, I want to say, in Nashville. I think it's a little bit related to people are being more cautious on their spending and like a little bit macro environment in the people are like kind of like they don't know what's going to happen in the economy, and they are like trying to like schedule their bookings later than earlier. I think I kind of like see that like in cross markets, urban and leisure too. Especially in shoulder seasons, we're seeing this more heavily. High seasons are still getting to like early bookings in advance, but in the shoulder season, we're seeing more pressure that booking windows are squeezed in the last minute. That doesn't really change on our side much the average booking windows, but what I've been noticing more is that people are either booking earlier or last minute. So like that mid booking window is kind of like decreasing like compared to before. So Nashville, Austin, I think we've seen this like in those urban markets for sure, and expanding to leisure markets, seeing similar like trend on the like Port Aransas, Poconos. Like these are other very short booking window. A lot of volume squeezed into like 14 days, like last 3 weeks window. So we can expand to that like in similar trends with the shorter booking window markets.
That's awesome. And I do want to go back to you real quick, Emily. You made such a great point about Orlando and it being that melting pot of a market, so to speak, because you're getting the last minute travelers, but you're getting those families that are planning out their Disney trip 8, 10, 12 months in advance.
Right.
What other markets do you kind of work in that you see similar trends like that, where we are looking at, potentially having, getting into that booking window thing? You're going to have people that are coming in 200 days, but then you've got to worry about those in the 14 minutes. So how do you kind of approach a market like that where you're really trying to get bookings further out, but also knowing, hey, we do have a plethora of bookings that are coming towards the very end as well?
I think that you have to also take into consideration whether you're a fly to market or a drive to market. And Orlando happens to be one of those that is extremely unique where it's both, right? We have a lot of people flying from all over the country, but then we have a lot of last minute travel that we know we can fill in from neighboring cities. We can market to places like Miami, especially with the train that we have going now. So we have the ability to kind of do both. You don't have the ability with all markets. So for instance, Hawaii, that it's going to, obviously it leans much more leisure, but it's a completely fly to market. So you have to be very much on your game well in advance. But with Orlando, you can kind of fill in last minute, adjust your strategies. But I always try to look at the different pockets of time that people book. So I know that if I'm going to look at a 7-bedroom villa in Orlando, that's not something that I'm looking to fill last minute. Can you fill it last minute? Absolutely, but you're going to take a hit on your ADR. So you're going to want to segment your portfolio based off of the lead time of the individual product that you're offering. Now, conversely, if you have a product in Orlando that's maybe a 2-bedroom condo, that's going to lend itself to shorter term bookings. So you might be marketing more to business travelers. You might, have to pay attention to different events that are happening more closely because people are possibly traveling for the events and not just, going to Disney. But you have to take each instance with a grain of salt and kind of really dig into the data because it is so nuanced, like you said.
Absolutely. Now, Emory, any thoughts on that as well?
No, absolutely. I think that's really critical, like knowing your portfolio, because segmenting out not only each market behaves differently, as Emily mentioned, like is the how big is your property, how many people are traveling to that house. It's obviously like require more planning in advance if you're traveling with like group of like 15 people versus like just 2 people. And I guess like another layer I can add to that is really the season itself. It might be like really, for example, I'll give a different example in 30A area or Charleston. Like if you look at January, February in low season, you'll see those booking windows like it's much shorter. But if you look at like summer, your booking window is going to be like 6 plus in advance, 6 months plus in advance. So it's really knowing the segment of your property is critical, but also like knowing the what time of the year that you're looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, working with customers and specifically in PriceLabs, one thing that I notice a lot of customers do is they're looking at their upcoming booking time periods and saying, I'm going to focus in on the end of October, focus a little bit on November. Exactly what both of you all are saying, like, hey, summer bookings are going to have a much longer lead time. We got to make sure that we're paying attention to those and really aware of how far out people will be booking. Perfect example, Nashville, you're probably going to get bookings 7, 10, 14 days out, especially during low season. But when you have an event coming up, when you have big spring breaks and you're in destination markets, when you have big summer events coming up, FIFA World Cups coming up, things like that, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those dates as well. Well, we just ran a poll and we've got 46 answers, so 50% of people responded. I would like to get this up to like 60, 70% if at all possible. So if you haven't responded, please respond for us. But 75% of folks are saying that they're seeing their booking window getting shorter. Only 4% are saying they're seeing it get longer. And then the rest of them are saying that it's still kind of unpredictable for them. So in these situations where we see these numbers and people are saying their booking windows are getting so much shorter, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but do you have any thoughts? And I'll start with you, Emily. Do you have any thoughts on sometimes we might have impact on our own booking windows and seeing those booking windows get shorter? Any thoughts on that, Emily?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I do have a lot of thoughts on that. You can look at the data in different slices, but I would encourage everybody to look at the market data as a baseline and look at your internal data to kind of measure up against that, because the decisions that you make will artificially impact your booking window. So, for example, if you are expecting the same rates as you did last year and you're holding tight onto those rates and the market is not sustaining those rates and you're not adjusting them, you're going to artificially shorten your internal booking window because it's going to take longer for you to book. Now, you might be able to adjust that by, chasing the curve and lowering last minute, and you can adjust your pricing because pricing is a lever that we use to change our booking window. So when you say that your booking window is shorter, I would encourage everybody on this call to take a look at their strategies that have affected their booking window. Another thing that impacts your booking window is going to be your restrictions. So if you work in for instance, Destin happens to be one of those markets that there's a lot of 7-night minimums. Well, if you're holding out on price and you're holding out on that 7-night minimum, but the market is shifting, then you are going to have a longer booking window until you kind of lower those prices, assuming that that's, where the market's going that year, right? So it very well may be the other way, and as the prices are going up, demand's going up, but assuming that demand is going down and you're not, changing those restrictions with the same strategy that you did last year and adjusting for the economical changes of this year, then your booking window is going to shift.
Absolutely. And Emre, any thoughts on that one?
Oh, that's a great point. I think it's really, if you just look at your last year performance, or past years, how your booking window evolved, and that's definitely, if you don't look at market at all, it's all biased information, right? It's like you're going to constantly repeat. And if you're applying a wrong strategy, if you underperform market because you missed the booking window past year, and you're only relying on last year data internally, then you'll be repeating the same mistakes again. So it's, as Emily mentioned, right? It's really important, we understand what's going on in the market. And after that, there are going to be some winning strategies, like not pacing in line with the market. Sometimes you might want to pace ahead or behind, and that can be your winner strategy. But I guess it's important you digest both information together, then determine your strategy, how you want to pace against market in high season, low season, based on the density of the market. So yeah.
Now, one other thing I kind of want to bring up as an outside influence type of thing on booking windows. I think everybody knows, especially if you're in a weather type of a place, if you're in a ski market or you're in a destination market that's typically a little bit warmer type of a deal, the people may be waiting to kind of see what's happening with that. One other thing that we're kind of seeing is just the macroeconomic trends, the value of the dollar's changing, airfares going up in a lot of places. How do you feel like in the markets that you're in right now, do you see those economical factors coming into play much at all with the bookings that you're getting right now? And let's start with you, Mr. Emre. Oh, go ahead, either one.
Oh no, Emre, you go ahead.
No, just I guess it's definitely a big impact. I think that's where the some booking window shortage is coming from, especially in shoulder seasons. I think people are kind of avoiding their extra trip they used to. People are still traveling during the peak times, still traveling their traditional summer trip, traditional holiday trip. But I guess in the outside of those days, people are just waiting to get a deal. And also people are not willing to commit further out, as there are some uncertainties in their economic conditions. So definitely there's a huge impact, and a little bit also what this leads into, people are also realizing prices are dropping as dates gets closer. So as they know the industry better and they have more booking habits, they're kind of waiting, and they're going into waiting game, and they know price is going to drop in some, especially high density markets. So they are playing both smart as well as kind of cautious, I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Emily, any thoughts?
Yeah, Emre brings up a great point. We've kind of trained the industry just because of our binary inventory nature. We have to fill every single home to the best of our ability. So we will tend to drop prices as it gets closer to the stay date, with the exception of compression periods. Sometimes those actually go up higher if you're very confident you're going to book it. So there is that dynamic happening. So, it's a mixed bag for sure. But yeah, I think that it's you just have to look at it from all kinds of different angles.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would kind of add on to this as well is from what I've observed working with customers and looking at the topper end inventory, like the things that have the amenities that are kind of not common in the market, or those really, really call them creme de la creme properties, their booking windows seem to be extending out a little bit. Like people are looking a little bit further at them. But if you have a property that is, kind of middle of the road type of a deal, I think we're seeing a lot of what Emery and Emily are saying, which is people are waiting towards that last minute. If there's not a big differentiator in the property and there's 50 of them that are kind of similar, you do kind of see people waiting towards the end. So not sitting here telling you to go and put a pickleball court in or anything like that, but anything you can do to separate yourself with quality and customer service, things like that, it can help you get those longer bookings, the bookings further out, all of that good stuff. Now we have another poll up here as well for you. This one is how far in advance do your bookings come in? So if you will, let's go ahead and hit that up. And if you will, we'll go over those results here in just a second. Now, I think we may have lost Emily for a split second. I'm not sure if everybody else seeing her pause, but the good news is she didn't pause with a terrible face. Sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we get stuck and we're like, but hey, you look wonderful, Emily. We'll see you back here in just a second, though. So,
And
Emery, let's talk a little bit about.
just want to add into that, like the last
Oh
point
yeah,
you brought up in the far advanced booking window. I think that is also like we're also seeing that similar pattern in the market data. There are more bookings like I say far advanced, like 12 months like ahead, like or 6+ months, like different than market behavior. I think that is also related with the macroeconomic conditions, and that's also like people chasing for the better deal. So we're seeing those cheap inventory that's going out of the market like further out, and that's where I was like going with like that mid booking window is kind of like getting smaller. Or like really the main motivation is focused on like how can they get a better deal. So
yep.
that's kind of like improving the further out bookings like coming in earlier, and also squeezing like last minute bookings coming at the lower rates as well, which
Yeah.
ultimately pressure ADRs in the industry.
Yeah, I think this is probably an oversimplification of things, but the stuff that gets booked really, really, really far out, like that extends booking windows, those are the properties that are top of the line type stuff, but it's also the people that are the low hanging fruit that don't have minimum stay restrictions that are appropriate for them, that have really low prices, that have flat pricing. Those are some kind of those bookings that we see on the farther outside. So if we're thinking about like let's think about a graph. You're going to have like 20% of the bookings here. And then as we get into that middle ground, kind of what Emery's saying is it kind of flattens out and we don't have as many bookings because people are waiting towards that, towards the end, so to speak. So I think that kind of fits with exactly what you're saying. So if you're getting booked out really, really, really far in advance, either your property is excellent and people really, really want to stay there, or you might have a strategy thing where we could increase our minimum stays or potentially increase your ADR as well there. So perfect mention there for me, Emery. Now, let me look over here real quick and let's talk about how would you approach it, Emery? Let's give you a hypothetical. Let's say you're looking at Thanksgiving that's coming up. You're looking at Christmas that's coming up. Your minimum stays are completely in line with the market, and the booking window just seems like it's coming in towards the last minute. For those dates, are you thinking more maintain your rates, or are you thinking more let's go ahead and bring this down a little bit? And I know there's plenty of caveats in there. Let's say the market's going to finish around 90-95%. How would you kind of look at that?
First, I will look at like what's my occupancy right now relative to market, right? Like if we are actually at hypothetical number 70% while the market is at 50, I would probably like selling some inventory at cheaper, right? So I would want to hold the rates and if not push more restrictions, like, and I guess obviously restrictions like come into place like a little bit earlier. I think as the dates gets closer, that's really another angle we should pay extra attention. If you're holding your restriction like at a higher 4-night, 5 nights, like for Thanksgiving, for example, you're probably missing out some audience. There are going to be like, I think we see direct correlation also between the length of stays as well as the lead time. as your length of stay increases, average lead times are also increasing as expected. So shorter trips like are easier to plan. So people are booking like shorter stays, like closer. So this is like really depends on your market, right? Like if you are like a short booking window market, as we talk here, Orlando, Nashville, Port Aransas, like, and you probably still have a lot of time to book them. But if you are in a market like Charleston, some California markets, and that's also like if you're focused on the larger properties, which we have a lot in our portfolio, like 6+ bedrooms, 5+ bedrooms, where most of our audience are at least 10 people groups, right? 10 to 20 people groups. So those people are planning their trips like well in advance, like maybe even 12 months ahead, and maybe they're rebooking their Thanksgiving year after year right after they check in with the same group. So I think it's really like coming back to what we initially told, like really important to understand your market, your category that you're targeting, and also like how you're pacing against the market. That's the most critical part. And
Absolutely.
also important to note there too, what happened last year might not be repeating this year too. So which is why it's critical to keep an eye on what's going on in the current market conditions.
Absolutely agree with you. Real quick, going back to the poll that we got a little bit more of response on this one. So we got 58%. Thank you all for that. Looking at this though, we did have almost 20% of respondents say that most of their bookings are coming in with 7 days. If you're one of these folks that is getting a lot of bookings within 7 days and you're into a fly market, let us know, put something in the Q&A. Maybe we can talk about your market and maybe give some suggestions there. But a majority of folks are actually saying between 8 and 30 days in advance. I think that's kind of reflective of what we're seeing. A lot of booking windows in these shoulder seasons, since a lot of the markets, especially in the States, are in shoulder season right now, are falling in that 25 to 30 to 35 type of a range. It is interesting seeing that only about 7% of respondents are getting bookings consistently 90 days out. So let's maybe switch up a little bit from where we were going to be talking about, and I'll get in and show some stuff in PriceLabs. But Emily, welcome back. Hello.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Sorry.
No worries. Tech happens, and especially when you're doing things live. So got a little bit of feedback. No worries though. Any suggestions, without knowing the market, without knowing like how things are set up, Emily, any suggestions just kind of off the top of your head for our attendees of how they can look at extending their booking window out if that's something that they want to accomplish?
I'm gonna try to see if this works without an echo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
I've got 2 instances of myself on the screen. A great way to extend your booking window further out is to lower your rates and release your restrictions. Those are the 2 biggest levers. You can also do marketing, certain promotions to try to get ahead of those early bookers. Sorry, can everybody hear me? I have an echo on my end.
We can hear you. There's a little bit of an echo, but we can hear you.
Okay, can you still hear me? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so there are things that you can do to change your booking window. Like I just mentioned, restrictions, price, getting ahead of the curve. So even if it's just lowering your rate a tad to try to get ahead of the curve, you can artificially impact that. And so if you know that the booking window, for instance, for low season is going to be about 30 days, but the price is going to be, let's say, $150. Well, maybe at 45 days, you might want to be, at $140, just to try to undercut that market to build your base. So it definitely depends on the different segments of travel windows throughout the year. You would treat it very differently. But based off of whether you think the market is going to go up or go down, or you're going to experience compression, you can undercut it or hold out your inventory in order to try to get those higher premium reservations.
I'm back on the mic now. So perfect answer for us. And I think what you were saying there, Emily, can really be tailored to what's the overall demand going to be as well. Like if we have a little bit of a threshold to go for a higher rate, maybe we're working those down just a little bit slightly. But if you know the market's only going to be at about 25% total occupancy, and you're kind of looking at your last year rate, I got it at 120. My current rate this year is at 150. There's no reason that you can't go in there and kind of make a little bitty tweak and try to get that booking a little bit further out. Emery, any suggestions from you on if we're wanting to extend our booking outside of what you mentioned with going in and bringing our rates down slightly, potentially making our minimum length of stay a little bit more exciting and enticing for guests?
Yeah. I think our portfolio also like a little bit different than the audience. Like we're getting like much more weight in like 90+ days window. And obviously, I guess it's a little bit related with our product type. It's a completely different scenario for our hotel product or multifamily homes, like where it's a smaller bedroom count. We see obviously a lot of like 30 days window, like 60 days window. But 90+ days, like it's also most common for our larger homes, like where it comes to like 4-5 bedroom plus properties, larger groups like planning earlier. So I guess like it's really coming to a place like, like as we talked initially a little bit how the market rates are going down as it gets closer to booking window. I think it's important to understand where your rates are starting and where your rates are ending. And you got to understand also how that works in the market, because as it's all like your data, your past year performance might be biased based on your performance. So really need to understand how the market is like evolving their rates over time for specific stay date period. So I guess really like once you start to understand that portion, then you start to strategize around this, like whether you want to ahead of the curve, behind of the curve, in which season, how you want to strategize around it. So obviously we don't want to just book it early and undersell it. That's the last thing we want to do it. But what's going to be the winning strategy in a specific market based on the rate you're targeting in different booking windows?
Absolutely. Real quick, I'm going to reshare my screen and we're going to look at some extra data real quick. Well, if I could actually share my screen. Hey, there's a squirrel right there. You like my squirrel? But all right, so here we are. This is our average booking, the change in the booking window for the months of June, July, and August of 2025 for some of these major cities that we've got here. And generally speaking, what we see is there's not a ton of change. This was during peak season, so it's kind of expected, so to speak. There's nothing here that we can see that says like, oh man, Chicago, the top end of the properties, they're going up. The lower ends, they're getting booked last. So when we were talking earlier this week, Emily made a great point about keeping in mind that things are averages, but there's also other ways of looking at this. So I want to hop into PriceLabs real quick, and I'm going to show you inside of the tool where you can go and kind of see this pacing and help you get some informed decisions. So I'm going to hop over here real quick, and I'm in a property that's in Breckenridge, Colorado right now. And where I would want you to go if you are a PriceLabs user, if you're not, hit us up, we'll do a free trial one of these days. But you go into neighborhood data right here. This is your pricing chart. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, but then we do have an occupancy chart here as well. Now I'm going to turn off my bookings back here, and let's just kind of look at what is going on with the market, so to speak. So this top line that I'm pointing at, that's going to be where the market finished last year. And market is being defined by PriceLabs 350 properties that are closest to it. Hyperlocal look at it. But when we get into this year versus last year data, we're going to be paying attention to these red and the gray solid lines. So red is this year's current occupancy in the market. The gray solid line is last year's occupancy in the market. Apples to apples comparison right here. So it's really easy for us to look in and say like, okay, overall, like if I'm just eyeballing this right now, the red and the gray, the occupancy is pretty much the same. Maybe right here, there's going to be an opportunity because it's a weekday. The market's pacing behind. The market finished at roughly 56%. This would be one of those things where I would hop in here and look and say, maybe I need to target this, make some type of tweak, or at least see if there's something I need to do. Now, on the same end, we want to look for opportunities to win as well. And one thing that we can look out here and see is basically, this is going to be one big spring break bump for you. Core Breckenridge, March 16th going in through the 20th and 21st. Then we have another massive one right here. And this is a big change up for us. Easter has changed year over year, but one of the things we looked at right before this call was the city of Denver's school system has actually completely changed as well. So spring break for them has moved towards the end of August. We need to be aware of these things. And what Emery was talking about, what Emily's been mentioning around quite a bit as well, is making sure you're on top of what's happening in the market. You always want to pay attention to what you are doing, but you need to know where the market's shifting as well. So right here, we can see about 20% of the market has already been booked up for March the 30th. That to me is an indicator that I need to have my eyes on it. How would you all kind of look at this particular time frame? Let's ignore what's going on with December, January, but seeing this shift for spring break, the market's already at about 20% occupancy. How would you look at this moving forward? And let's start with you, Miss Emily.
Well, looking at this graph, it looks like occupancy is pacing behind for the week prior, which makes complete sense, being that last year that's when Easter was. And so those dates have just kind of flip-flopped.
Yep.
So I wouldn't necessarily be super concerned about anything at this time, especially being that there's low occupancy. But as it starts to creep up, there starts to be pretty significant changes between what I would compare the same week. Obviously, like one's happening earlier, so you have less lead time, but it's still far enough out that you can make all of the changes that you need to make sure that your pacing is on point with where you need it to be from last year. So like looking at this, I wouldn't be too alarmed because obviously the first week of April, right after the end of spring break, all of that travel, there tends to be a depression in occupancy. People tend to stop traveling after they've had a big long break, whereas spring break can be anywhere from middle of March, beginning of March to whenever Easter ends, and sometimes even after. But looking at this, I wouldn't be too concerned. But if you wanted to alter it, if you weren't happy with it, if that gap starts to increase, then you're going to want to look at your pricing. How is your pricing compared to last year? And maybe you're doing too much of like historical anchoring, or you're focusing too much on the prices that you got for those physical dates rather than that travel window, which would be Easter. So I would just keep those things in mind and adjust your pricing and restrictions accordingly as pacing starts to pick up.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And Emery, how would you kind of look at this situation right here?
Breckenridge is one of our markets, so a little bit inside information there too. Like I think last year, what I'm seeing here, like obviously December is pacing ahead of last year, and which I do think it's related to like market operators, like I kind of learning from past year. We've seen like a softer early ski season last year, and I do think this kind of tells me there's probably some more cautiousness in the market, and people are kind of like trying to get ahead of it earlier, so they don't fall into the same issue that it has happened like last year, and don't rely on too much data. That's one read I have here. And obviously, as you mentioned, right, like spring break change, that's pretty obvious here. One thing I mentioned to my team is like, you might not know what's happening in the events. You might always miss out new events that's coming to the market, or spring break dates are changing. But if you're paying attention to data, if you're reading this chart, that you're going to be clearly seeing those outliers. Yes, you're going to have an idea of like something weird happening on those days, which leads to you investigate further. Like once you see those discrepancies, like I think most important part, especially when managing multi-market, it's harder to keep up like some of the changing environments. But once you pay attention to data, you'll always catch those like easily. You don't need another information actually when you read those data properly.
And one thing I do want to point out, gotta get my PriceLabs spill in here, so to speak. Those situations where you have spring breaks moving and you have Easter's moving, your dynamic pricing tool should be going in there and making sure that that's kind of factored in for you. With PriceLabs, you kind of saw that the things that the pricing kind of matched what we had with that shifting. But any dynamic pricing tool that you use, you're going to have that support in making sure that the calendar is kind of set up as well. So keep an eye on your calendars, pay attention to when things might move, make sure you're aware of what events are coming in and all of that, and that can help you make those decisions. Going back to kind of what Emily was saying about, hey, I can look at my rate and potentially bring it down a little bit if I wanted to extend my booking window. If you have a big event that comes in, there is always a little bit of risk reward with that. You might want to go in if you see a really high price inside of PriceLabs, maybe the demand sensitivity is really pushing it up. You could get in there and say, let's cap this down a little bit and convert that longer booking a little bit ahead of time. But we're kind of getting up on time. We've got about 15 minutes left. So I do want to hit one other spot in PriceLabs. And I want to show you how you can make some quick adjustments and prep for these things. So the first thing I want to show over here in this listing, we're going to go to our customizations. The first one that I think is really important factor with PriceLabs is the occupancy-based adjustment. So this occupancy-based adjustment is a part of the PriceLabs algorithm, but it's something that you can tweak if you want to. The original state of it essentially gives you a little bit of movement from 1 day out up until about 60 days out. You have a couple of options in here. If you're in a lower season and you want it to be a little bit more automated for you, consider coming in here and looking at the aggressive form. But if you want to, if you've got a good understanding of your properties, if you know those booking windows really well, you can tailor this occupancy-based adjustment to that booking window. Again, this isn't something we're going to suggest to the average PriceLabs user or anything. But if you are starting to get really comfortable with the tool, you understand your booking windows, you can come in and customize this. You can see you can change those date ranges up. That can be very beneficial for you. The other area that's super beneficial for non-novice users is this custom seasonal profile. Just kind of being able to go in there and say, okay, during this period, I want a specific minimum length of stay. During this period, I want a specific minimum length of stay. Coming in here and getting yourself set up for success can be very, very beneficial. And one of the things to point out here, PriceLabs, you can come in and do non-repeating seasons. So if you are in a crazy market like Chicago that has a ton of events and all that stuff, you can come in here and set up seasons based on year. Or if you're in a market that is just very much the same year over year over year, Breckenridge, I think, is pretty much like that. We know when ski season is. We know when the Uller-Fest is. We know when Oktoberfest is. Kind of all that stuff. You can come in and set up repeating seasons, and then all you've got to do is just kind of manage it here. So that's the end of my PriceLabs stuff. If you have any questions about using seasonal profiles, using occupancy-based adjustments, or using our dynamic minimum stay engine, which I'm going to show real quick. And 1 is my lowest. And now we have a full list of suggestions for our recommended minimum stays. If you have any questions about these, throw them in our Q&A. At the same time, if something comes up later down the line, reach out to support@pricelabs.co. We'd love to show this to you and get you to use it. So, all right, with that, we're done with the spieling. We don't have a lot of questions. So, Emily, you got anything that you want to talk about when it comes to booking windows? Anything you think we haven't covered? I know one of the things we were going to talk about is the different definitions of booking windows. A lot of people say different things with it. So let's talk about it from your perspective. I think you kind of cover the RevProf perspective, which standardizing it. Listen to Emily when we talk about booking windows. No pressure,
I think it might
no
be
pressure.
helpful just to kind of go through the process that I think about when I think about booking windows, because that's kind of included into it. So I would say that step 1 is segmenting my travel windows, because every single day has a different booking window. And you would want to segment your travel windows based off of seasonality, but also events and compression dates, because you might have those little micro booking windows within a larger, for instance, low season, but you have an event smack dab in the middle. So you're going to want to make sure that you segment that appropriately, but then also look at it from different angles. So even on different channels, you're going to have different booking windows. If you are, absolutely. Like, so if you have a niche travel channel that you're, for instance, booking snowbirds, those folks are typically going to be booking further out than someone that's going to be a little bit more last minute, such as Airbnb potentially. So, or Whimstay, they're a very short booking window. So you're going to want to segment it based off of all of those different things, product type as well. The size of your product matters. And then I'm going to take a look at the market data and I'm going to say, okay, what is the market telling me for these specific travel windows? What's happening as a baseline in the market? And then I'm going to layer in my internal data and see, okay, do I line up with this? And what did I do in my strategy last year that I would consider to be effective? What do I want to keep? What do I want to throw out? And how do I want to change that so I can, not necessarily follow the market's booking window, because you use that as a baseline, right? It's a guiding force. It's not something that you're like, okay, I have to be at this. And it's also important to note that we kind of touched on this a little bit. There are 3 different ways to calculate booking windows, and it does depend on the data that you are looking at. So, well, I guess we'll go back to statistics here. You have your mean, which is your average. You have your median, which is basically the middle point between your lowest and your highest. And then you have the mode, which is where you can find clusters of booking windows that are happening. And that's not something that really gets talked about very much in this industry. I don't think there's a lot of tools that allow you to do that, but you certainly can look at that in your internal booking windows. So for instance, if you're in a snowbird market, and Emre alluded to this earlier, that, in Destin, you have a ton of snowbirds that are coming in January and February, and those booking windows may be drastically different for January and February. That typically can be a short booking window, but for that traveler segment, you're going to have a much longer booking window than you are going to if you open that up, you relax your minimum length of stay. You're not doing those 14, 30 night, month-long bookings that you're trying to get early on, and you relax it, then you might have those a completely different traveler that comes in. Those drive-to families or weekend warriors that might be, looking at just filling in your weekend calendar. So if you segment it appropriately, the data will start to tell you different stories. So when we say booking window, I feel like it's a gross understatement of what we're actually looking at, because there's so many different layers that we're actually peeling apart, and you use the data to start to investigate and then go from there.
That was awesome, Emily. In all honesty, I think that's one of the best clips that I've gotten out of one of these master classes. So thank you for getting that out there. And for the PriceLabs team, let's start looking at the median and mode stuff as well, please. That would be very, very valuable. Emre, do you have anything you want to add on to what Emily said there?
I mean, that was a perfect summary. So Emily didn't leave me much to add. But I guess just I can reiterate, I think segmenting everything out is the key here. Segment out your customers, they behave differently. Segment out your channels, Vrbo leads gonna be much longer than the Airbnb leads, and also segmenting out your portfolio from different bedroom size, because each gonna tell a different story. If you look at November as a whole month, and you're gonna have different data points versus you're looking at only Thanksgiving and rest of November as together. Same thing in December. Any month there is an event, there is a holiday. It's important we always take those out and really separate the month, including and excluding those days, and look in those events and holidays separately, because that's going to be whole complete story, and it's going to also changing your average numbers for the month, and also the buckets that Emily mentioned, right? It's not really the 30 days average booking window, but actually that 30 days might be actually coming from 0 to 7 days, and maybe nothing between 7 to 60 days, and you have 60 to 180 days. That's another bucket. So just hypothetically, right? Then your numbers are completely different. Your average maybe it's going to come closer to 60, but that doesn't mean you're really booking at 60. So really understanding that, I think how each of your customer demographic behaves and how you segment out, that's going to be really the key.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we got to this part. And just as kind of a oversimplification kind of way to think about it, let's talk about the month of December in any market. Christmas is probably going to have a 60 to 90 day lead time. The weekends in December may have a 25 to 30 day lead time. Monday and Tuesday during the slowest period, or the first week in December, they may only have like a 7-day lead time where people are actually really, really looking at it and trying to get that booked up. So great examples there. I'm going to hop into PriceLabs one more time real quick because I wanted to show where you can look at this information kind of in bulk, so to speak. So let me hop back out of here. And where I'm going to go is to my portfolio analytics. So if you're logged into your PriceLabs, you can go right here to portfolio analytics and you can go to pacing report. Now in this, I'm going to preface this. I have dummy data in here. So when you look at my ADRs and my occupancy, don't think I'm a terrible revenue manager, please. It's all just fake data in here. But you can come in, you can overlay a market dashboard if you have one and get that market information. But we're going to go and just kind of look at my pacing real quick. And again, this is based on month, but I can come up and change it up. Let's look at that daily. This will take just a second to load, and promise not going to spend a ton of time in here. If you have any questions about looking at portfolio analytics, you can come right here, go to our training section, and then you'll find plenty of help about the portfolio analytics. But I can come in here and I can see how I'm pacing. This is my occupancy chart. So me versus myself year over year. And what I can see is right here, I'm following along pretty well. Ooh, there's that random first weekend December. I'm pacing really far behind right now in occupancy. So I can kind of train my eyes to go look at that there. Now I can also come and look at how my ADRs are coming in. Again, not going to spend a ton of time in here. I promise you I'm not a terrible revenue manager that's getting half of the ADR. Promise you that. But this area in particular can be really, really useful as well. And this is your booking curves area. And just as a quick example, I'm going to hit over to comparison mode and let's go take a look at, I got to get this out of the way. Let's go take a look at November of this year and see how how my booking windows, how my ADR and my occupancy is comparing versus last year. Now, revenue's way up. I had a bunch of properties added to my portfolio. Makes sense, revenue would go up. Real quick, just as a view here, I can look, and right now what we're looking at is my occupancy. Occupancy, I was outpacing myself up until I got right about here. So I've slowly started to fall behind where I'm at. I come down here and look, and I can see that I have not given on my ADR. So just as a quick example, coming in, I'm looking at my whole portfolio right here. I'm seeing how I'm pacing for the month of November. My occupancy's catching up, or my last year occupancies really started to catch up to this year's. My booked ADRs are not coming down to last year's rate. So I could look at this and very quickly kind of say, I need to go check my minimum lengths of stay and my pricing and see if there's an adjustment. Now with this, come in, filter, you can segment how you need to. If you use groups, you can look at them as groups. You can look at individual listings, individual clusters as well. So if you have any questions about this, reach out to support@pricelabs.co. Don't want to turn this into a demo or anything like that, but you can find this information very easily there. With that said, we got a few minutes left and we've got some questions. You've also got a poll up right now. So if you'd like a follow-up about the product, you're not a customer, go ahead and put yes, please in there. Somebody from our team will reach out to you. If you don't want to get hit up by the marketing team, just hit no and we'll go about it that way. All right, so let's look at our questions. And real quick, Henry, my guy Henry, I love this dude. How do you guys define pacing health? If this was covered, totally ignore it. But I don't think we actually covered necessarily pacing health. So let's go ahead and start with you, Emre. How would you define pacing health and how do you kind of look at it?
I think two ways to look at it, like on the pacing side. You can look at your occupancy pacing. That's one angle. And you can compare your occupancy pacing against same time last year. And another angle, you can also look at like revenue pacing, right? How is your revenue pacing might be different than your occupancy pacing. So really like looking at both. And I think the most important part with that is also comparing your pacing against the market. So I guess like there is no one straight answer, as we mentioned earlier. Like it's like based on your strategy, like what you're trying to accomplish on that. Like, are you trying to get ahead of market? Are you trying to just hold your inventory and wait for the cheaper supply to go out of market? So I don't think there is one answer will simplify this, but it's really like looking those like two metrics and comparing those against. That's going to tell you the story.
Awesome. And Emily, how do you kind of go about defining pacing health? Anything different from Emre?
I think Emery took the words right out of my mouth. You would use certain starting points. I typically like to start with occupancy. Total revenue is, also a metric, but then you have changes in unit counts you have to be concerned about. So, and also, like he said, your strategy impacts that. So I like to start with occupancy because my revenue might be pacing behind, but it might be pacing behind intentionally because I am trying to hold out for longer rates. So if I'm shortening that booking window because I felt like I sold too early last year, then maybe my pacing is actually good. So there's that layer, right? You have to add your strategy in, and is it matching with it? Do I know what to do with this occupancy the way that it's at? So I would agree with Emery.
Absolutely. I agree with both of you. Real quick, we're going to hit the rest of these questions. We may go a few minutes over, so my apologies if we do. But let's take a look real quick. Coburn has, this is kind of a specific PriceLabs question, so I'll take this one. But for more advanced users, do you recommend tailoring prices using seasonal profiles? Or is PriceLabs generally more confident in seasonality sensitivity? And if you do recommend seasonal rates via custom profiles, do you recommend changing the seasonal sensitivity? That's a very nuanced question, and my advice on that would really depend on how advanced you are. Generally speaking, I'm not going to suggest changing the base price seasonally in PriceLabs ever, unless there's just some extremely unique case. I think that is very, very advantageous if you know what you're doing to use seasonal profiles and setting some parameters, maybe some minimums and maximums if you don't want rates to fall out of buckets, but kind of saying like, here are the outsides of it. Play within this for me. Seasonal profiles for your minimum stays are absolutely useful if you know how to set them up. If you don't know how to set them up, hit us up, support@pricelabs.co. We'll send you some documents and help you with that. But you definitely get some good value out of using seasonal profiles that way. Now, in terms of changing your seasonality, I think there's two things you can look at there. If you are in a market that is year over year over year, very same, like you don't have a ton of events, that would be one of those situations where I would say, if you know what you're doing and you've got some good parameters, you could turn seasonality more aggressive if it's a heavily seasonal market. Now, if you're in a place that brings in events and things like that, you may want to consider leaving seasonality where it's at and tweaking the demand factor instead. So that way, if demand is really performing well, like let's say you're in Nashville and all of a sudden you've got a Taylor Swift concert or a Morgan Wallen concert that gets announced and demand spikes, your rate's going to spike. But at the same time, if that event does not bring the demand that you think it would keep your rates lower a little bit as well. So kind of play along that ways. Test these out. If you think it's useful for you, go ahead and test it, but A/B test it. Do it on one or two listings or one group. Don't go in there and turn it on for your whole account because you're never going to really know that impact. That would be my advice there. Now, we do have a couple more questions. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them. Sorry, Henry, we're going to skip over you because we all know you and we'll reach out to you separately with that. Let's go to Evan, though. He says, do you view looking at MP as just a quicker way to view occupancy pacing versus downloading reports? Should you have a target MPI at all times based on season? And what he's asking about is the market penetration index metric that PriceLabs has that we look at in revenue. Essentially what that is your occupancy divided by the market's occupancy. And if you are at a 1, you're going to end up winning with it, so to speak. To me, I would say it really depends on the segment. And unfortunately, I think that's the answer to a lot of things. It depends on the segment. It depends on the property. It depends on your owner's, risk tolerance and their thresholds. All of that stuff kind of plays into it. Also depends on, are you chasing ADR? Are you chasing occupancy? Are you chasing RevPAR? All of that kind of plays into it. So Evan, just kind of as a broad stroke, I would say the MPI you should be looking for during peak season. If your ADRs are really high, you need to be at least 0.95 is where I would be targeting. Ideally, you want to be right in line with market at 1, making better ADR than them. But at the same time, if it's lower season and you're chasing occupancy, maybe you're looking for a 1.2, so about 20% higher than the rest of the market. But again, that's just kind of a broad stroke. It's very, very important to pay attention to your individual market, your individual data. With that, thank you all. I know we went a little long on this. Emily, Emre, thank you so much for today. I know we had the little hiccup, Emily, but you came in and swooped in and saved the day just like you always do. So thank you all so much, and we really appreciate you. Looking forward to what you've got going with RevProf, and Emre, looking forward to what you've got going with AvantStay. And tell Miss Sarah Franzen I said hello next time you talk to her, Emily. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
You as well. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.